Hey, Peter, welcome to When Spirit Talks.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
I'm happy to have you here, and I can't wait to learn about your journey and your story and how you became a hypnotherapist and a life coach.
Okay. All right. Fire away.
So, what got you into the world of hypnotherapy?
Same day in 2003, when I was volunteering to be a firefighter in my town in Connecticut, they required us to take a pretty extensive physical.
Mhm.
And on the first day, the doctor said, "Wow, you're in really good shape for your age." I was 41 at the time. This was 23 years ago. And they said, "Come back and give blood." So I came back and gave blood. And then, like the next day, all these alarm bells went off. I had all these messages to get back to them. And when I did, in a very grave voice, they said, "We think you have Lyme disease and a rare form of leukemia."
Mm.
And I thought, this is absolute insanity. This cannot be true. I went right into denial. And I said, "I want to give blood again." And so they said, "Come on back in." I came back in, gave blood, and they had the exact same result. I went to see a hematologist oncologist, and they said, "We don't know how to cure this. We don't know what causes it." When I asked the original doctor how long I had to live, that was one of my first questions.
Yeah.
They said maybe 10 years. And again, that was 23 years ago. And seeing the hematologist oncologist, I saw she was about my age, and on her credenza behind her desk when I was sitting there talking to her, I could see that she had little kids. Well, I had little kids. And I knew how overworked doctors are. And, here's an overworked doctor with two little kids. How much time does she actually have for me? Plus, she's telling me, "We don't know why you have this, and
Yeah.
we don't know how to cure it." So I just thought, I'm going to have to find a different way. So I found, I just started researching. I put the business that I had almost on autopilot. I just did invoicing and payroll. And I spent maybe 6 hours a day just researching and reading. And I went from the purely physical cause and effect up to the power the mind has over the body. And that made a lot of sense to me. And then there were a couple of seemingly disparate events that occurred, including I owned this little shipping and packing store, and a woman walked in and wanted to mail a box to Hypnotherapy Academy of America, Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I got into this amazing, like, hour-long discussion with her. Her sister had been one of the founders of the school. And then I just kind of filed it away. And then a couple other things happened. And my wife and I one night were watching The Secret, the movie The Secret. Back when you had to, like, you could pay and stream it. It was one of the first movies I ever saw streamed. And halfway through, I hit pause and I looked at her and I said, "I have to be a hypnotist." And she looked back at me and she said, "Yes, you do."
Wow.
And so I did some research on that particular school in New Mexico. And I was really impressed. And I thought, well, I need to do due diligence. So I looked at some other schools, and none of the other schools really spoke to me. And I called up the one in New Mexico, and they said, "We have one spot left and we're starting on Monday." This was like a Thursday or something. And my wife was like, "Go, go, just go." So I went, and I felt like they were correct when they said your life will never be the same, in a really good way. And that was true. That was true. From the 3 months or so that I spent there immersed in this, I came back, I believe, a different person. And
Wow.
that really launched in earnest this new chapter, if you will.
Wow. That's amazing. That's incredible. And I'm sorry you had to go through all of that chaos, initially, but it's wild. I feel like for so many people, what gets them on this path is chaos that like uproots their
Mhm.
whole life and like shatters their sense of safety. And, it's like it makes you see things in a different way. So, and the other thing I feel like always happens is you hear something once like how you mentioned, oh, I saw that hypnotherapy box, and then you kind of forget about it, but then it comes up again, and then you're like,
Yeah,
what? It comes up again, and that happened
yeah,
with me with Reiki too. Like I had heard about it, I didn't know what it was. I was like, what is that? Whatever, and then it just it keeps popping up, and it's like spirit is kind of telling you, hello, pay attention, right?
yes, yes, exactly. And I, I've I had a person I was talking to, I think it was a podcast or a couple of years ago, and she described getting this twin diagnoses as getting hit upside the head with a spiritual 2x4, which I agree with that. And I think what that means, to your point, is that I wasn't really paying attention prior to this, because clearly things were happening. They just weren't as loud and as powerful. It wasn't enough, apparently, to get my attention. I think I had a lot of resistance. In retrospect, there was a lot of anger there too. And I honestly feel like I needed it. I wouldn't want anybody else to go through it, but I feel like, looking back on it, that it had to happen, which I think, and I'm sure you would agree with me, that I think when you can see things as happening for you rather than against you, you automatically have a quick win. Because even with the science of epigenetics, this concept that you can change, the scientific fact that you can change your genetic expression based upon the emotional state that you carry. And then you take it into other aspects of the body, the tension that you have and what happens to your immune system and your reproductive system and your endocrine system and your digestive system when you're holding all that stress. Well, when you move, in my view, from seeing things as being done to you like a victim to saying, I wonder why this is happening, no matter what it is, it changes your relationship with the event. And I think brings you way more calm and a clearer mind with which to deal with this thing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm perfect and that I can always do this easily, but I'm much faster to get to that point. And when I do get upset or hold on to something, I don't hold on to it for nearly as long.
I'm with you. And what's funny is that this morning I was driving to work, and I always get downloads when I'm driving to work. It's just the thing. I have a 45-minute commute.
Oh,
So I was driving down, but it fits exactly with what you were just saying with the perspective, but not even that. It was about how when we hold anger or resentment or like slights that people have done to us, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
oh, let's say there's this person in your life and whether they're at work or at home, and you can't get away from them and you just keep remembering, like, oh, they did this to me, 5 years ago, or they keep doing this. And it's like every moment you keep that in your body. I was kind of visualizing myself as, like, let's say my body is a cup, right? And every time I remember that slight and that feeling, that emotion that wasn't fully resolved, it's like I drop like a piece of dirt in my cup. So my
Yep.
body is now holding this energy, right? This
Yes.
emotional energy, this like
Yep.
imprint of energy. But what happens is if you don't release it, your body just keeps piling up, right? All these like specks of dirt just keep going. Where can they go? They get stuck in your body, and over
Yes.
time, it results in physical issues because if you're not
Yes.
treating it at the source, it just stays there. And eventually, it's just like you brought up, like you had to get to diagnosis. Like you got to get slammed because it's like, wake up. Like I need to let you know that something is going on so you can
Yeah.
kind of work on it and try to heal your body in whatever way you can. But it was just so funny because when I heard you speaking about holding the anger and letting it
Yeah.
go, that was my download for the morning. And just,
Oh, that's really
yeah,
profound. Yeah. Yep.
yeah.
And the spiritual teacher Byron Katie has this whole thing where she speaks about the same concept, and she says that someone can only kill your cat once,
Mm,
but you can experience the trauma of that event 10,000 times,
yeah.
which is true because your subconscious mind cannot distinguish between something that happens on the physical plane that our conscious mind, that our group agreement of consciousness and reality would say, yes, that happened, and something that's vividly imagined.
Mm,
And this is why when you watch a movie or you watch a political debate or something, you can get all agitated, all emotionally invested, even if you know in the case of a movie that it's not real. Your body doesn't know that, and everyone has had that experience. And it's the way they market the films. They say it's a roller coaster, seat of your pants thrill ride.
Yeah.
They're
Well, this week,
describing, a nervous system experience if you pay your, $12 to go see the movie.
yeah, this weekend we were talking about, I don't know, some movie was on, and I'm like, oh, I can't watch those movies. And I was, it wasn't even a real movie. It was about, there were animals in it, and one of the animals gets lost or they're alone. I'm like, I can't watch those. And my husband's like, it's not a real dog. It's okay. And I'm like, no, but yeah, it's whether it's real or not, your body responds in a real way.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And that's a really important fact for anybody listening to register that that we are all so sensitive in that way. And that this is why self-talk, negative or positive, has such a profound influence, because the subconscious mind, which is really running your life, it's 90 to 95% or more of your brain's processing power. The subconscious cannot distinguish. So even as a joke, if you talk negatively about yourself, that will go into the subconscious. I describe it to clients like it's always as if you're walking around with a 4-year-old version of yourself who believes everything you say. And so we must be, if we want to live, a kind of happier, healthier, more abundant life, we have to live with that in mind. We can't be careless with our words or even the thoughts that lead to certain emotions.
I have a question. Because the subconscious, right? It's something that's just going on in your mind. How can you bring your awareness to your subconscious thoughts throughout the day?
That's an awesome question. And I'll quote another statistic. And when I say these numbers, no one knows exactly, but it gives you the idea. So it is thought that the average person has 60,000 thoughts per day. And you're only aware of like 3 to 5% of them. Mm. But we all have an awareness when we have this thought going on in our head, especially when it gets verbalized, where there are people that have been unconsciously trained to push away good things. Like if they receive a compliment, for example, that would be a moment that you could acknowledge, you could recognize, you could say, "Oh, I just pushed away that compliment."
Yeah.
Somebody said that I looked attractive today or something, and I said, "No, I'm not." Or, "You're really skilled at this." Well, there are people who are more skilled. Something like that. Yeah. That would be a moment. And then I'm sure that there are other moments for the average person. We've all had it. Where you might say that you're not that smart, or you're not that talented, or whatever it is. Or you're just walking around ruminating about something. Like to your point earlier. And recognize that as you're ruminating, if you're ruminating by placing yourself in the negative in some way, that's going directly into that quote unquote 4-year-old whose hand you're holding and walking around all the time with. And that will influence you, especially if it's repeated. That's one of the tenets of hypnosis, is repetition, which also happens to be the only mechanism that organized education utilizes. If you want to learn how to do anything from tie your shoe to learn to speak Spanish, it's all based on repetition, because it's trying to knock down this barrier between your conscious and subconscious mind called the critical factor. Hypnosis just opens that door so the communication is easy. Children are always there. But if you're repeating something that you don't want over and over again, please don't be surprised if that starts to manifest.
On that note, how can healing or like uncovering those subconscious thoughts change our physical health?
The first part of the answer to that question would have to be based around your autonomic nervous system. So autonomic just means automatic, and it only has 2 modes. It's either in fight or flight, which means it's perceiving danger, or it's in rest and digest, which means it's perceiving safety. When you are in fight or flight, your body is it almost feels like it's hijacked. And everybody has this experience.
Hmm.
You know, you're in an argument with your little kids or with your husband or your wife. You know that they're not going to physically harm you. In the case of little kids, they can't. And yet your body can get hijacked. That means you've moved into the sympathetic mode of the autonomic nervous system, what we call fight or flight. And when that happens, your thinking goes from your prefrontal cortex and the executive functions of your brain to something called the lizard brain that's only concerned with survival. Your heartbeat becomes elevated. You dump adrenaline and cortisol into your bloodstream, and it gives you all of this energy. And all of your body's major systems that I alluded to before, including your immune system, get robbed of energy so that can go to your muscles, so you can run or fight, you know, the woolly mammoth
Hmm.
with your spear. That's what it's designed for. And you could imagine, anybody on this podcast could imagine what would happen if you were in that state chronically. And your digestive system, that 50% of the energy was taken out of that. Your endocrine system that runs all of your hormones, 50% of the energy taken out of that. Your reproductive system, and most importantly, your immune system. If that's been diminished by 50% and it stays that way,
Wow.
you've now got digestive issues. You can't conceive. You know, your testosterone is low if you're a man. You've got all of these other problems with hormones. And then the big one, in my opinion, is the immune system. And I'm not a doctor or anybody, so don't listen to me. But the immune system, if the immune system has been diminished, you're subject to opportunistic diseases. I mean, the only thing that keeps people from getting cancer is basically their immune system. So that would be the first level. You know, if you're having thoughts that lead to emotion and feelings in your body that are negative, that's what's happening. And the other thing that's happening is that aspect of epigenetics. Epi just means, in Greek, it means above, so above genetics. And if you're in a chronic state of fight or flight, then the negative genes that we all have, the ones that are encoded for disease, those get upregulated or turned on, like turning on a light switch. And the good genes get downregulated. Well, the opposite is true as well, that if you have a practice of meditation or Tai Chi or yoga or just walking in the woods with your dog or something, and if you are able to clear out trauma that you've suffered in the past, you'll move more towards that rest and digest mode of the autonomic nervous system, and the epigenetics will work in your favor. It'll downregulate the deleterious genes and it will upregulate the good ones.
Mm.
So when people say that stress kills, that's how it does it. In those two mechanisms that I talk about, the epigenetics and then the thing that happens with all your body's major systems.
Wow. What I took from it too is that you have a part of control, like you're able to control part of that, which is
Absolutely.
hard because I feel like when things happen or stress happens or situations happen and a lot of it can be out of your control, but you can come back to center and figure out what can I control with my mind, with my body, with my emotions, with my breath in the moment. And
That
that's,
is 100% true. And the other thing I would like to say
yeah.
is that so much of the stress that we deal with as human beings takes place either in the past in terms of recrimination and regret and guilt and shame and all these other things, or it occurs in an uncertain future, worry, anticipation about something that frankly may or may not happen. Most of our stress doesn't actually occur based on things that are happening in the precise moment. It's usually anticipatory, or it's that stuff about regret, shame, you know, the stuff in the past. And this is where I think a lot of my focus comes into play, because remember I said the subconscious mind has no concept of time, nor does it understand that whole thing about what we call reality. Right? Everything is real to the subconscious. There is no time, and its job is to protect you. So if you get triggered by something, What that means, and there's no real danger in your environment. Like if somebody points a gun at you, no one would say you were triggered by the gun, but you kind of were, right?
Yeah.
Triggered usually means a tone of voice or the temperature or a word or something that is an echo of something that happened in the past, a trauma. Well, the solution isn't to try to, like boy in a bubble, keep you from any possible triggers that could happen, because anything could be a trigger. The solution is to heal the traumas from your past, the ones that to your subconscious mind are still a clear and present danger, even though consciously we know they're not. And once those are healed, when you have the trigger and you don't get your body hijacked, you know that you've healed it.
That's
So
amazing.
that to me is the gold standard for dealing with chronic sympathetic nervous system activation, using whatever word we want to use. Worry, stress, anxiety, depression, grief, all of those words to the subconscious, to the body, all that means is that your autonomic nervous system thinks there's danger, period. Because remember, it's either danger or safe. That's it. There's no third option even.
That's so clear. It's like black and white.
Yeah, black
Makes
and
it
white.
easier, yeah.
And what you're saying is also important, because if you haven't cleared up that thing in the past, or you haven't gotten control of your thoughts, and even if you work on these things, it's still going to happen. You're going to see something on the news that's going to set you off, or what? If something's going to happen to somebody else, or whatever. Then all of those techniques that you're talking about, 100%. And if you have a daily practice, the physics says that a body in motion tends to stay in motion. So the more you bring your subconscious mind to this place of peace, the harder it is to knock you off center, and the easier it is to return back to that place, because you're training your neurology to be there. Just like you're training your neurology to be in a place of stress and anxiety, if that's where you are most of the time. And what do athletes do, and performers? They train themselves to be in a particular state.
Yeah. Now, speaking of training, I love your YouTube, by the way. We'll have to get
Thank
the
you.
information at the end. But I want to bring up, you have so many videos. So there's two things I want to bring up about your videos, but I want to talk about first subliminals. Just in
Okay.
case there are people who are listening who don't know what a subliminal is. Can
Hmm.
you talk about it? Tell us what it is, how it can help.
Absolutely. So I have, I think, 250 plus videos on my YouTube channel. Most of them are designed around the concept of self-help. So it's like a guided journey to deal with some particular issue. And the most popular videos on my YouTube channel pertain to weight loss. That just is the way it's been. And of those videos, there are 3 that have between 1 and 3.5 million views each. So they're wildly popular on YouTube. That's it's not 20 million views or whatever, but for me, that's a
Yeah.
big number. And those videos are largely these subliminals. So subliminal means below the level, like a submarine, below the level of awareness. And within that, you would have like subvisual and subaudible. And what this means is that on a subvisual, you could flash something on a screen so fast that the conscious mind cannot recognize it. It can't detect it. But the subconscious mind can, because it's so much better at processing information than the conscious mind is. The conscious mind processes, it's estimated, 16 bits of information per second. And the subconscious mind is like a million or more bits of information per second. I mean, it's just not even close. And this can be used to influence people without their knowledge, with or without their knowledge. And subaudible means it's the same concept, but now you're using sound. So the way I make a subaudible is I create the same kind of hypnotic track that I would do for an audible track, And then I turn the volume down low enough so I can just kind of just barely hear it. And then I put something over it to mask what's being said. So that could be music, it could be rain sounds, it could be the sounds of ocean waves. And I clearly label it as subliminal. I'm not fooling anybody. But I find for me personally, those are the ones that are the most powerful because that can be done while you're sleeping. That can be done while you're working on your computer. That can be done while you're, watching TV. You can just have that in the background and you don't have to have it cranked up. You just have it so you can it's just playing softly. And if anybody is wondering about the effectiveness of it, this is such a cool little laboratory in a way, the YouTube channel, because with so many views, you can imagine a tiny fraction of people will comment, but it's still thousands of comments.
Yeah.
And you can read through the comments. And it's astonishing when you hear person after person after person after person saying, I don't know how it works, but I dropped 40 pounds, like over a year or something. Or a woman was listening to this and she said she lost like 25 or 30 pounds and her husband, who didn't even know what it was, lost 12 pounds.
No way. That is
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to say that it like works for everyone,
Yeah.
all the time. Some people, the audible tracks work better for them. But it's a tool in the arsenal that can be used for people's betterment. And one of the reasons I have so many tracks is that there are a lot of issues that people, are interested in working on. And then there's a lot of different permutations about how you can deliver it. And subliminal is one of the most powerful tools.
Wow. Do you feel like, let's say, a hypnotherapy session versus a subliminal? Are they both effective? Is one more effective than the other? What are your thoughts on that?
So that's a great question. Traditional hypnosis is the hypnotist puts the client into a hypnotic trance, and we can talk about what that is because I think that's important for your listeners to know. And when they're in the hypnotic trance, they deliver what we call suggestions, which you can think of as kind of like seeds that go into the subconscious mind. And just like putting seeds in the ground, so you don't know which ones are going to grow, if they're all going to grow, or it's usually some of them grow if you take care of them. And that's largely it. I mean, there's different ways of doing that, but that's largely it. Hypnotherapy traditionally has been thought of as you do that, yes, but you're really looking for the obstacles that's holding somebody back. So let's say that there's someone out there who, unfortunately and tragically, horrifically suffered like sexual abuse as a child. And the subconscious mind decided that the way it was going to prevent this from happening in the future was that they were going to add, an extra 80 pounds to the person's body. Perhaps to make them less attractive in their perception to a would-be attacker, and also to create a physical barrier between them and the world, almost like a suit of armor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if all you're using is suggestions, it's probably not going to work because the most powerful emotion in subconscious influence in the subconscious mind always wins. If for the subconscious, it's between, she gets to lose 80 pounds and be healthier, or someone's going to attack her. It's a clearly easy choice. And the subconscious will actually block it.
Wow.
It might let her lose 10 pounds and then it'll just stop it. So my focus on the one-on-ones is on the side of the proverbial coin that represents the blockage or blockages plural to that person's forward progress. And that would be a trauma or a series of traumas, because that's what created the dynamic in the first place in this hypothetical example. I spend less time in the one-on-ones on the suggestions. I always do it, but I spend less time on that because really, this is just my opinion. I feel like we all are children of God. We are all eternal spirits having a temporary experience in a body, and we have this magnificence inside of us. And the only thing that prevents this magnificence from being expressed are illusions. that are beliefs, emotion combined with an idea that was forged in the fire of a trauma. That we're not good enough, that we're not worthy of something, or that it's not safe for us. You know, and once you clear that out of the way, you enable this natural part of every human being. The part of a human being that we see in babies. I think it's hard to look at a baby if they're clean and they're fed and everything else and they're warm, that you don't see the face of God in that baby.
Hmm.
The purity and the joy and just this light. And everyone has that. It's just like the windows got dimmed, so it's harder to see the light that's inside, because there's soot on the glass.
Yeah. It's interesting how you bring up specifically like weight and protection, because I think a lot of people, and I was that way as well, till I'll mention that in a second, but I feel like we all want to feel safe. And if there's a way to put some kind of barrier, whether it's like an emotional barrier, a physical barrier, when you're feeling unsafe, like that hits home. But also, it's interesting because when I was younger, when I was a teenager, I had an eating disorder, an anxiety disorder that lasted for years. And so even after I healed that, I'm not into diets, like I don't do any of that anymore. But I was always like at a certain weight. And I remember once I wrote my book, I put my story in my book where I actually, you know, wrote everything in there to the world. And I almost took it back, but it was too late. It was too late to take those pages out. I was like, oh
Yeah.
gosh, it's there. But it's crazy because it's like weight just came off, like physical weight from my
Oh,
body came
yeah.
off. And I remember someone had asked me, like, how did you lose so much weight? Because I wasn't trying, I wasn't dieting, I wasn't
Yeah.
exercising, I wasn't really doing anything different.
Hmm.
And she was like, what are you doing? I was like, to be honest, because I always try to figure out what's going on. Whether it's a past life, this life, trying
Yep.
to figure out. And I'm like, I think that's what it was. It was finally not that I felt safe in the moment, but it was like putting myself out there, right? My story's out there. I don't have to hide anymore. Like I didn't physically have to hide. So it just goes like that example is just kind of, yeah, illustrating exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And if I could add to that
Yeah.
too, that the subconscious is literal. And we talk about emotions, negative emotions especially, as being heavy,
Mm.
as having a weight to them. Like we talk about a heavy heart. And the subconscious is literal. It doesn't get the nuance of, oh, that's an emotion. It's just heavy.
Mm.
And by being so courageous and writing this down and putting in a book, it's like you took it out of your brain and your mind, and you took it out of your body and you put it on the page. And because the subconscious is literal, for you it might have been like, we don't have to carry that anymore.
Mm.
We can let go of the weight. This is actually a phrase that I use in pretty much every one of my weight loss tracks, which is, you are safe to release the old weight.
Mm.
So it's building in that concept of autonomic nervous system, the rest and digest mode, not the fight or flight, and because you're safe. And then I know that the subconscious will perhaps interpret the old weight as the physical weight and the emotional component that goes along with it.
That's so
So it has sort
interesting.
of like a dual meaning. You are safe to release the old weight.
That's so interesting. Now, let's say someone, right, is trying to lose weight in a healthy way or wanting to cultivate like a stronger, healthier body image, like the way they see themselves in their body. Um, how can they use their conscious mind to influence the subconscious? Is that a thing?
Sure, yeah, I mean it is, because the conscious mind has a will force. and it has the ability to establish a direction. And when it's very healthy, the conscious mind and the will force is like a person sitting on top of an elephant,
Mhm.
riding the elephant. And rider and elephant are in communication with each other. They're not fighting each other. The elephant responds to the rider. I suppose you could say it's like a horse too. Horses are super
Mhm.
powerful. They're much more powerful than human beings are. And and rider, I've ridden horses, but I'm not trying to say I'm an expert, but rider and horse can establish a relationship where the horse trusts the rider.
Mhm.
And and when the rider just thinks going right, the horse senses that through, micro movements or something and goes right.
Wow.
That's the I think the best relationship that we can establish with our subconscious mind. And next question is, well, how do you do that?
Hmm.
And part of it is there's a book you're probably familiar with called The Four Agreements,
No, I never heard of
ancient
that one.
ancient Toltec wisdom. It's phenomenal. It's just this tiny little book,
Okay.
and it just has 4 points for living. And one of the agreements is be impeccable with your word. And to a hypnotist, this is really powerful because it means what I was saying before. We want to clean up the language that's taking us in the wrong direction. Be and not get upset with ourselves if we find that we're saying something that's negative. Just notice it. And then in your mind, you just imagine just throwing that off to the side and saying its opposite. This would be another example of consciously taking the reins
Mm.
and um, holding on to grievance and resentment, like that concept that everything is happening for you, it's not happening against you, and getting curious when something that you perceive as negative is happening. It's like, I wonder why this is happening. I wonder what it's trying to teach me. I wonder what it's trying to tell me. So you don't have to be like me and get hit with a spiritual two by
Mhm.
four.
Yeah.
Um, actively programming your mind. That's a conscious decision to say, I'm going to go onto YouTube and I'm going to pull up a track. It might be audible, it might be subliminal, it might be while I'm sleeping, it might be a short track or whatever, but I'm going to spend a certain amount of time every day programming myself for the outcome that I want. That would be a consciously initiated action. As would deciding, you know what, it's time to heal that pain that I suffered when I got divorced, you know, 15 years ago. I'm still carrying that. I know I'm carrying it. So I'm gonna do what I need to do to dig that up, neutralize it, and say goodbye to it forever. Because it's like having something disgusting or toxic in your house. You know, you can wall it off. You can close the door to the pantry and put tape on the cracks and spray it with Lysol, but how long do you want to live like that?
Yeah.
Every time you walk by it, you get some nasty smell. And to take this metaphor or analogy further, um, at some point the solution is going to be you put a clothespin on your nose and you build up your courage and you have time and you open that door and you walk in there and you get this nasty thing and you take it out and throw it in the garbage. And from that point on, everything gets easier. You go back and now you're cleaning it, and pretty soon you've reclaimed part of your house that previously was off limits. And that's a real feeling of accomplishment when you tackle something that's just been sitting there for a long time and sort of has a low level of negativity that's
Mhm.
that's influencing you. That's a real accomplishment when you feel like, hey, you know what? I finally took action on that and now it's cleaned up and I feel so much better.
Yeah. Now I want to get woo for a second. Woo woo.
Sure.
Because we're
Yeah.
talking about traumas that could happen in this life or past experiences from our childhood or from 2 days ago, right? That influence our bodies, our minds, our emotions. Well, how do you know the difference between, right? If someone's not aware of this, how would you tell the difference between whether it's a past life trauma
Mhm.
that is
Yep.
still taking place in your body versus a past trauma that you consciously don't remember from this lifetime.
Yeah, sure. The short answer is you ask the subconscious mind,
Mm.
because the subconscious mind knows where the origin point of a symptom resides. So if your symptom is anger, your subconscious mind already knows. Even if you consciously don't know, your subconscious mind knows exactly where the origin point is of that, whether it's earlier in this life, and if so, at what age and in what circumstance or situation. It knows exactly. Or if it was a past life, it knows the exact past life and the exact scene in that if you were watching it as a movie where that occurred. And the way I have worked out over the years, I've been doing this is my 20th year doing this work, is I have my clients hold a pendulum.
Mhm.
And a pendulum, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, is in a class called an ideomotor tool, which means kind of which sort of like automatic writing or muscle testing. It allows you to establish communication with the subconscious mind. And the answers you get can surprise you because they're coming from your subconscious, not your conscious mind.
Mhm.
And if that seems strange to people, I'll just call your attention to what is super common in our culture when you have a really, really, really important decision to make. Your friends and family will say things to you like, what does your heart tell you? What does your gut tell you? What does your intuition tell you? Sleep on it, right? We already acknowledge the presence of wisdom that we have access to.
Mhm.
We don't know really if it lives in your heart or your gut. We don't know exactly what your intuition is, but we recognize it's a thing. And the pendulum gives you a systematic, reliable way of tapping into that part of you. And it's remarkably accurate in
I do
my
love
experience.
pendulums.
Do you?
I
Okay,
do.
good.
I do. And I never, I just trust myself so much that I don't need to use those anymore. But for the
Yep,
people who are thinking, because I've had like students, I teach the Akashic Records, which is not like past life regression, but in the
I'm
same
familiar with the
realm,
Akashic
right?
record. Yeah.
Going back into past lives. And my students have gone through the courses, and a lot of the questions that I get are, how do I know what I'm receiving is true? Right? Like, because they're thinking, wow, it just popped in my head. What if I'm making it up? What if
Right.
I'm imagining it? And I did see, I loved on your YouTube, you had something about your imagination, a video on imagination and if it's real. So I want you just to like give a statement about that because I think it ties into all of those intuitive feelings we might get or like subconscious memories that are popping up so we can acknowledge them in the moment and heal something now. But that voice in your head is saying, what if I'm making it up?
Yeah, exactly. Which really takes us to one of the biggest questions of all time, and that is, what is reality? Because in order to say, or even have the question, am I making it up? It's assuming you already know what reality is, and that this is outside of that. So for me, I have wrestled with this, and what I have decided is that what we call reality in our culture is real, but it's in a very small little proscribed box. It's largely what I would call a five sense reality. In other words, if I can detect it with one of my five senses, then it's real. But that would kind of mean the things that I can't detect with my five senses then aren't real, which we already know isn't true because you and I can't see the radio waves in the room in which we sit, or the TV waves, or the Wi-Fi. All the information is flying through the air. We can't see that. We can't taste it.
Yeah, that's a great visual.
And our sense of sight, which we seem to rely on more than the other senses, if you look this up, it'll blow your mind. What percentage of the light spectrum can you see with your eyeballs? In other words, what percentage of the light spectrum is visible light? The answer is 0.0035.
No way.
We're totally blind.
Amazing.
And we have the arrogance to walk around saying, that's real, that isn't. That person's crazy, this one isn't.
Hmm.
That's not possible. That's insane. How do you know? So I think, let me give you another example of the whole reality thing. Back to the movie. You pay your $12, you sit in the seat, you're watching a movie, your heart starts pounding. Your blood pressure goes higher. You're dumping adrenaline and cortisol into your bloodstream. Your muscles get tense. You're gripping the sides of the chair. You start crying. All those physiological actions, there's not a person who wouldn't say those are real. Because why? We can detect them with one or more of our five senses, right? That's real.
Hmm.
Their reaction is real. How do you have a real reaction to something that's fake?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible to
Yeah.
have a real
I
reaction to something that's fake. I mean, I acknowledge that a movie is what we call fiction, but fiction is a form of reality. It's just not in our little definition.
mm,
You know, there are people who reportedly have cured themselves of cancer just by sitting and watching comedies for a month.
wow. Wow.
There are people who have had near-death experiences. Anita Moorjani wrote an amazing book on this, on her own near-death experience called Dying to Be Me. And she was, on death's door. She had lemon-sized tumors all through her body. She died in a hospital, hooked up to machines. Everybody acknowledged she was dead. She had an experience of consciousness outside of her body. And she recognized in this experience, and she was having multiple experiences simultaneously. Love, was aware of all of her loved ones and where they were and what they were feeling.
Mm,
And she recognized kind of in the instant that she had created all of her own misery, including the cancer in her body. And she knew when she came back, it was all going to go away. And she came back, and these lemon-sized tumors within 2 weeks were all gone.
incredible. Wow.
That's a version of reality that doesn't fit in the little box.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my suggestion is consider some of these points
Yeah.
and then juxtapose that with you've been programmed to not believe yourself. You've been hearing people say things like, that's not possible.
Yeah. Especially I feel like in this spiritual space, right? I feel
Definitely.
like 100%.
Yep. People saying it's only a dream.
Hmm.
It's just your imagination. And I would say, where did jet aircraft come from? Where did MRI machines come from? Where did handheld communication devices come from, if not from someone's imagination?
Yeah.
I mean, we know for a fact they didn't exist 200 years ago.
Right. It started with a thought and it became
Yes.
reality.
And
Exactly.
the thought was
Yeah.
imagination.
Exactly. Yeah, I tell them all the time. I'm like, if something is popping up in your head, trust it. It would not be coming up. You wouldn't be making it up. It just doesn't happen that way. It's coming up because you need to know the story. And that
Yep.
story
And
is your truth.
yes, and there's a saying from the theater which got extended to movies, and that is what every audience member does. And that's called a suspension of disbelief.
Hmm.
That when you can't go watch a movie or a play or read a novel and not suspend your disbelief and enjoy it. It's impossible. You can't just sit back there with your arms crossed going, they're all actors and they've got makeup on and that's a
Hmm.
set and that's a prop and those are stage light. No, you suspend your disbelief and you allow yourself to go into it. And when you do, you have all of those reactions that I
Yeah.
mentioned before. And so what I would suggest that people do is not immediately, if you're not comfortable, throw out all of your doubt and your
Hmm.
questioning and your skepticism. Fine, keep it, but not while you're doing the practice.
Hmm.
Make it just like a movie. The time to take it apart is after the
Yeah.
movie's over. After you've had your experience, then you go sit and have coffee with your friends and talk about what you liked and didn't like, what you believed and didn't
Exactly.
believe.
Yep. I say that too. I'm like, get the information, right? Go into the records, get the information, see what you need to see, and then figure it out later. Don't analyze in the moment. It's gonna mess everything up. Just let it
It'll
be.
totally mess it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Like, if you were, I guess it's kind of I don't know if it's a crude example, but people don't do this when they're in love,
Hmm.
right? You're not in the moment. You can't be in the moment with your beloved,
Right.
whatever that moment is, whether it's intimacy or anything else. You can't be in the moment and go, and how am I feeling about this? What's my left
Right.
arm
Right.
doing? And, how's it working? And like, it's,
Yeah, it's like you have to be in flow. Just let
yeah,
let
you
it be
have
in
to be.
flow. Let your
Yes.
ch yeah,
That's such a
exactly.
perfect way of saying it. Such a
Exactly.
perfect way of saying it. I
And
love that. I love that. And then once you let yourself have the experience, then you can live with this,
yeah.
you know? And the other thing I would say on this topic, you can tell I'm jazzed up about this.
I
I
know I
love
could
this
speak
topic.
to we still have our spirits on it. And I'm like, I could speak to you for hours. This is so interesting.
Me too. Is when the emotions get activated. So, for example, I'll speak about an experience I personally had. I've been with hundreds or thousands of clients going through this same thing. But I like speaking from my experience because I can tell you what it felt like inside of me.
Hmm.
And that was, um, I was in my wife and I were having struggles at the beginning of COVID. We were on different sides of the fence, and we were meeting with a marriage counselor. And after the session ended, we were just talking, and I looked at her and I said, "Something's coming up for me right now. Something big is coming up for me." And she said, "Okay, do what you need to do." And so I was in my office. I sat down in the client chair, I closed my eyes. I went into a trance, and I immediately went into a past lifetime. And in this past lifetime, it was taking place in the Middle Ages. It was the summer. It was hot. There was green grass and like a hill. And I could hear my lead representational system is auditory. So I tend to hear things more than see them, but I see them
Hmm.
too. And I could hear the sound of a battle. I could hear, metal clanging and people scream, men screaming and shouting, and I felt like I was in the thick of this battle. And then the next scene was I had a spear in my chest and I was rolling down a hill. And I came to rest at the bottom of this hill and I was just looking up at the sky and I knew I was dying.
Hmm.
And then the next scene, because for the people that don't know this, a past lifetime can just change scenes. And the next scene was I was standing in a small, like, one room cabin like house, and in front of me was a woman, very short, and three or four children that looked like they were between 2 and 6 or 8 or something like that. And they all had on these gowns, looked like a white gown, sort of, is the way I would describe it. And as soon as I saw them, and I didn't recognize any of them. In other words, the woman, I knew she was my wife, but I didn't recognize her. I didn't
Hmm.
recognize her as my wife in this lifetime or anybody I'd known or anything, nor did I recognize the children. As soon as I saw them, I burst out into tears. And I don't cry super easily. It's not super hard for me either, but it's not something I just do all the time.
Hmm.
And I burst into tears. And when I was crying, sitting there in the chair, that other part of me was like, "Why are you crying?"
Hmm.
And I had, and I was, it wasn't just weeping, it was racking, heaving sobs. And that went on for a couple of minutes. And they were just looking at me. And then I said to them, I just found myself saying to them, "I'm so sorry. Like, I failed you." And they said, which was kind of funny, "You died fighting. What else were you supposed to
Wow.
do?"
Yeah.
And I had this moment of like, holy shit, they're right. Like, what else? But I don't know how someone has an experience like
Yeah.
that and says, "Oh yeah, I just made it all up." Why would
No.
I make that up?
Yeah.
Why would I see people I don't even recognize and immediately have this
Yeah.
intense, overwhelming emotional response? And that's
Mm.
why I say when the emotions get involved, it's real.
I love that. That's really good because I feel like it gives you like a concrete knowing, in
Yes.
your mind. It's like, okay, I might not know if it's real, but I know if the emotions are really, really strong, there's a connection there.
100%.
Yeah.
And the question I like when I was in the corporate world, one of the things that made me absolutely nuts along these lines was people would say, well, if you can't measure it, it's not real.
Mm-hmm.
That's just grade A bullshit. And I knew it at the time. And what the first thing I think of is, do you love your wife? Do you love your kids? Oh, you
Yeah.
do? Prove it.
I like
Well,
that.
I bought her this really nice ring. That doesn't prove you love your wife.
Yeah.
I
I
sent
really
my
like
kids to
that.
a private school. I worked extra to send. It doesn't prove it either.
Yeah.
Prove it. Prove that you love them. You can't measure it. It must not be real,
I really like that. I really like
right?
that. That's a good
It's the
one.
same
Yeah.
thing. The emotions are what your body's a feedback mechanism. That's how come the pendulum works.
Mm.
Your body is a feedback mechanism, and it's feeding back to you. Oh my God, I love this woman. I've never felt this way before. I would do anything for her. I don't want her to be with someone else.
Hmm.
I want to live the rest of my life with her. How do you know that? Because you feel it.
Yeah.
You're not thinking, oh, she's smart and she has all these capabilities and that'll make a good business part. It's not like that.
Hmm.
You may layer that in later, but it's the emotions that let you know this is the person that you want to marry.
I
So
like
now
that.
we're going to take that same concept and deny it over here?
I have never heard of that, like put that way. And I'm like, it makes so much sense. It's so easy to see. It's like, how can you disprove that? So that's amazing. Now I want to go into the spirit segment and I want to know what is one thing you always include in your daily routine that keeps you grounded and balanced that can help others.
So my meditation practice is really probably like a self-guided hypnotic practice.
Mm.
That's just how I like to do it. And I meet with my spirit guides every day. So I meet with my principal spirit guide. He sits right in front of me with Jesus, with Mary, Angel Michael's behind me, and a deceased dog, this dog right here. I don't know if you can
Oh,
see it. And then the dog that I have now, who's still in physical body. And I go through the process of taking myself into the trance, and then I pat both dogs, and and a lot of times they just make me laugh because they're just playful, and they make the guides laugh, which is really funny. And
mm.
then I imagine like a trap door opening on the top of my head, and I imagine the light of God streaming in through the top of my head. And as it comes in, I take it in with the in breath. And as I exhale, I just say kingdom of heaven. And I do that I do that 12 times. And then I open myself to my guides and I just say, what do you want me to know? Or if I have any questions, I ask them.
And you
And some
trust their
days,
answer.
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of times they just say, you're doing a good job, just keep going. And other times they say, don't take yourself so seriously. Other
Mm.
times they give me really profound information, like the sun is an information field and it expands your spiritual vascular system, is what they said.
Wow. Amazing. Now, what is your favorites? That might have been one that you already shared, but do you have a favorite story regarding your connection to spirit?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I've got a number of them, but the one that just comes into mind right now is I was having a really hard time in my life, maybe, I don't know, how many years ago, like 15 years ago. And so I was in with my guides and I said to them, is there an animal, a creature of some kind that represents what I'm going through right now? And immediately they showed me a frog going boink, 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 boink. And I was disappointed with that.
Hmm.
Like, I think I was expecting something manly.
Really
Like, I
cool,
wanted,
right?
yeah, something cool and manly. Like, I wanted a big predator cat, like a lion or a leopard or something like that. And so I kind of mentally just pushed it away. And I centered myself and I said, okay, now I'm
Give
ready.
me the real one.
Right, yeah, exactly. And so I see again, boink, a boink, a boink, a boink, a boink. I'm like, okay, all right. Why did you show me a frog? And the immediate answer they gave was because this pain you're going through now represents a leap forward.
Mm,
Wow. That my instinct was to push it away because it didn't
yeah.
meet a preconceived notion of what I thought was manly. I thought it was, kind of wimpy, but I was prepared to push away this wisdom of leaping forward. I was like, wow, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Like we go through pain and trauma to learn something, and sometimes it's an accelerated learning.
Hmm.
It's just it's just such, to me, mind-blowing wisdom. And that's the other thing about trusting it. When it comes that fast,
Yeah.
or something will come and what does that mean?
It,
I don't know. And then you go look it up and you're like, holy crap. I
hmm.
didn't know that that meant something that pertains to something I'm dealing with right now.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
this happens with my clients all the time in session, that their spirit guide will give them a gift, for example, or they'll say, I don't know why I'm seeing this, but I'm seeing a hawk, or they're seeing something. Or they get some sensation in their body somewhere, or they see a ring on their hand and they say, oh, it's an amethyst, or it's a opal or whatever. And I'll look it up and I'll say spiritual meaning of this
Hmm.
animal, or spiritual meaning, and it's like, holy moly, that deals directly with what you, the client, are going through right now.
Yeah.
It's
I like how you
astonishing.
brought that up because I feel like with like even when I do sessions, right, insights come through in the moment and it's always like pay attention to what happens the next few days because what you're aware of in this moment might blow up in the next few days and you might actually become aware of it. It's like, right, like, okay, I'm seeing a frog, right? In my mind, okay, the frog is my message. 2 days later, you might literally see a frog hopping in front of you. But in the moment, you're like, it doesn't make any sense. So I like telling everyone just, when you get these downloads or insights, just be aware of them and keep them in the back of your mind because usually what happens is in the next few days, something's going to register and it's going to click and it's going to make sense.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. For
Now,
sure.
do you
I had a
have,
client,
yeah.
yesterday that I was working with, and his spirit guide gave him a box. And he's telling me, I'm looking in the box and it's empty, which that has a meaning all by itself, but his was different, which was there was a hole in the bottom of the empty box. And he looked in the empty box and then he looked through the hole and he could see this gorgeous vista of nature, which brought this really calming feeling over him.
Mhm.
And the lesson of this gift was something in your life that you are interpreting as a negative is really a positive. And this is what it is. And told him exactly what it was. And he's like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah.
My first blush reflexive uh, decision or judgment was this is not good, this sucks, this is bad. But now I look at it in a different way and it's like, no, 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 this is a gift.
Which is what you started talking about when we first started the podcast.
Precisely,
It's
yeah.
like all coming full circle. I love it.
Yeah, and
Now,
so much of it depends on what you were talking about,
yeah.
which is, for want of a better term, it's trusting oneself.
Hmm.
Being willing to step out of we all have it, the programming that we got.
Hmm.
It's only a dream, it's just your imagination. Step out of that for a minute, suspend disbelief, just let yourself have the experience. See where it takes you.
Hmm.
And see what emotions might come up, and then make your judgment.
Yeah.
If you do that and you keep doing it, I think everyone would find they begin to really trust this inner guidance more and more. Each year that goes by, you trust it more and more.
That's true. That's true. The more you do it, the more easily it comes, the more you trust, the more you get those thoughts and those like insights quick, quick, quick. 100%. Now, do you have a
It's the
final?
same.
Yeah, keep
I wanted
going.
to say it's the same with the subliminal tracks. you know, it keeps happening to me because it seems almost impossible that it could work.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I'm like, how does, like, if you're right, if you can't hear it, how does it work? How does your
You
subconscious pick
can't
this
you
up?
so the thing about masking is that it's right there, right? When I record it and I'm messing with the volume, it's right there, but it's masked by something else. So the other thing is kind of think of it as distracting you. But
Mm,
these but the essence of it is still coming through that can be perceived by the part of your mind that has a million times more power than your conscious mind.
that
So
makes
the
sense. I
idea
see that.
isn't
Yeah.
that you tune it so low that you can't hear it, it's that it's masked,
Mm,
that there's something floating in front of it that occupies your conscious mind, let's say.
yeah,
Does that
that
make
makes
sense?
sense. It does make sense. It does make sense. It's like, when I'm going to take blood, right? And I'm like putting my fingernails into my palm. It's like I'm bringing my awareness over here and I can't
Yeah.
feel, the prick
That's a great
where it's
example.
going.
That's
Yeah.
honestly a great example. And I had said, and maybe I could just sneak this in real quick, that
Yeah,
I was
definitely.
going to define hypnosis.
Yes, please.
And I like to define it in ways that pretty much anybody can relate to.
Hmm.
And so anyone who's ever driven a car, which is probably almost everybody on this podcast, has had the experience of driving the car, pulling into their driveway, and not remembering driving the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Everybody on the podcast has probably had the experience of watching a movie or a TV show or becoming absorbed in a novel, and time passes and the thing ends and like that's 2 hours. Everybody on this podcast probably has had the experience of doing something like playing a sport or working around their house, and then they're in the shower and they realize they have a giant bruise on their leg or they've got a cut on the
Mm.
back of their hand. They're like, how did I get that? Well, yeah, why didn't you feel the pain? The answer is because you were in hypnosis. Hypnosis is a focused state of concentration where selective thinking is employed. And what this means is that we go in and out of these states where we have a wide aperture of awareness down to where it's like we're looking through the diameter of this pen. And when you're looking through the diameter of that pen and you're so focused, anything outside the diameter of that pen, it's like it's not even happening.
Mhm.
That's what hypnosis is. And it's that natural to us that everyone goes in and out of this all the time. They just don't know they didn't know that's what it was. They thought it was
Right.
a catatonic, sleep-like state where they've got their arms out in front of them and they do whatever they're told.
Yes. Yes. That is, I feel like a big misconception. That's
Yeah,
what you think. Right. Like this person's going to make you go quack like a duck in front of
exactly.
an audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And I'm not saying that that's not possible with certain people in certain circumstances,
mhm.
but I'm saying that hypnosis is a much broader range of experience, and the much by far and away more common one is what I just explained, those
Yeah.
different
Oh, that's
instances being
interesting.
examples.
Yeah. It's like tying that label. It totally makes sense. Thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have one final tip for listeners who are working on trying to improve their spiritual well-being?
Trust yourself. I would go back to that concept. I
Yeah.
don't think there's anything in my experience that I believe is more important than learning how to trust yourself. Trusting the information that you're receiving and not pushing it away like I did with that frog.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
whether it comes in a dream or you see something that really gets your attention and it keeps showing up like a cardinal or something,
Hmm.
or you keep seeing the dime on the ground, or you are actively either in a guided track or you're taking yourself through meditation into something and you're actually able to speak to your spirit guides or whatever. Trust yourself. And at a minimum, just suspend your disbelief while you're having the experience and then decide what it means. Pay attention to your emotions. If your emotions are getting engaged, I'm going to say that's another marker that what you're doing is real.
I like that, like paying attention to the emotions. And I like your tip too. And I think I just recently posted a reel on that about something like, if I remember correctly, like don't ask your guides for signs if you're not going to trust the wisdom that you're getting, because what you're going to do is deplete that trust that you have within yourself and
True.
how, you're receiving messages and trusting yourself and moving forward. And it just fits perfectly with what you were just saying and how important it is to trust yourself in any moment, whether it's a spiritual thing or after making a decision or, whatever it is.
I totally agree. And
Yeah.
if you're ever able to meet with your guides and you ask them a question and they just look at you and they smile, that means you already know the answer.
Mm.
And they want you to trust yourself.
Yeah,
Kind of like a really good teacher or a really good coach. They don't want to spoon feed you everything.
exactly. And that's
They
why I
they
think I think too, it's like a lot of times people want answers. People are like, can you connect with me to see what I should do about this? But it's like your guides won't always give you that information because part of the journey is you making decisions, right? To learn lessons, to forge your own path. Yeah.
and so along those lines, because I agree with you totally, along those lines, you can say to your guide if they're not answering you, you can say, um, "Do you prefer to not give me that answer right
Mm.
now?" And what you'll probably get is something like that.
Yeah. That's good for
And then you can
confirmation.
say, like, you can ask questions. It's okay to ask questions. You can ask them, is there another experience or learning you want me to have before you're willing to answer that question?
Mm.
And you'll probably see this. And if you do, take their hand. This is all happening in your consciousness. Take their hand and say, will you lead me now to that experience or that learning? They'll probably do that. And if you trust, they'll take you somewhere earlier in this life, a past life,
Hmm.
a life between lives, and you'll have that experience. Then when you come back, now say to them, are you now willing to tell me that other thing? They'll probably tell you.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Yeah. Amazing. That's a good tip. Now, where can our listeners go to learn more about you?
Okay, so blueskyhypnosis.com is one of my two websites. That's more of a catch-all or a clearinghouse for all the different things that I do. And then my YouTube channel is also called Blue Sky Hypnosis. And as I said, there's 250 plus pieces of content there. You can explore it. It doesn't cost anything. And then I have a petermclaughlin.com that is focused more on relationships. I really, really find myself drawn to working with people who are struggling with relationships.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. And before we go, I pulled a card
Okay.
that's going to represent you and, this whole episode. And then the
Okay.
message for everyone else will be at the end. So are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. You got this card, which is in this deck, the Three of Pentacles, but it's not even that stood out to me. What stood out is how you are helping others go underneath subconsciously to uncover all of these patterns and lives and traumas so that they can build success. And, you're working together collaboratively to help them meet their goals by going underneath the
Wow,
surface.
that's so
Yeah,
cool.
right?
Oh,
It's
wow.
if
Thank you
for
for
anyone
that.
who can't see the picture, it's an ant hill, and there's three ants that are like, you see all the holes
Oh,
underneath the dirt.
wow. Yeah,
Cool, right?
everything that's out of sight.
Yeah.
Different
Yes.
paths. Actually, it almost looks like and I suppose you could think of it that way, like a mini mountain.
Yeah. A mini
Like
mountain, yeah. Or a
if we thought
labyrinth
of
with all of these things. Yeah.
different
All these
paths to the
pathways.
top of the mountain, like
Yeah.
not everybody takes the same path, but everybody gets to the top of the mountain.
Exactly. I love that. I love that. And the message for everyone else is what came to me was you don't have to do this alone, and that there's a call to be open to either receive help, ask for help, or work with someone else to kind of help you meet your goals in a quicker way. So,
I like it.
thank you so much, Peter,
You're
for
welcome.
coming on. It was fascinating. And yeah, I really enjoyed our conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much.